What would you do if your corrupt boss dared you to translate a contract just to humiliate you, and you uncovered a secret clause that could take him down? That's exactly what happened to Grace Whitmore, a quiet cleaning lady at a failing electronics factory in North Carolina. Everyone overlooked her. No one knew she used to be a top law student fluent in German. They only saw the mop in her hand, not the mine she'd buried to survive. But when the arrogant factory director mocked her in front of his staff and tossed her a German contract expecting her to stumble, Grace didn't flinch. She translated every word. What she revealed didn't just shock the room, it set off a chain of events that would unravel years of fraud, shake an entire company to its core, and force one woman to choose between silence or standing alone against power. You're about to witness a story of betrayal, courage, and the quiet fire of someone who refused to stay invisible. Stay with us because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know about who really holds the power in the room. Every morning before sunrise, Grace Whitmore slipped through the back entrance of Whitestone Technologies, her worn-out sneakers silent on the concrete. A once glorious electronics factory in Asheville, North Carolina, the building now groaned like an old man, rusted pipes, flickering lights, machines that coughed more than hummed. It was barely holding together, just like Grace. 10 years ago, she was on track to become an international legal consultant, fluent in German and devouring corporate law at the University of Virginia. Professors said she had a photographic memory. "You'll end up running a firm one day," one told her. But then her mother, Evelyn Whitmore, was diagnosed with a rare degenerative illness, the kind that doesn't wait. Grace quit everything: school, dreams, pride. She picked up a mop and started scrubbing floors to afford her mom's medicine. People at the plant never knew that. To them, she was just the cleaning lady, the girl with headphones and eyes down, always avoiding attention. But attention came anyway. That February morning, snow floated down like confetti from a dying sky. Grace was late, again. The city bus had broken down 3 miles away, and she had run the rest in slush-covered sneakers. By the time she slipped inside the administrative wing, her fingers were raw, her coat soaked, and her heart pounding. She stopped by the director's office to collect trash bins and wipe down surfaces. That's when she saw it, a folder, thick, heavy paper, a foreign logo stamped across the cover, and the text German. She froze. Words she hadn't used in years came back to life. Vertrag, Verkaufsbedingungen, Entmachtungsklausel, contract, sale terms, clause for removal of power. Her fingers trembled as she reached out just to glance at the first page. "What do you think you're doing?" The voice cracked through the air like a whip. Grace snapped her head up. There he was, Logan Carter, the factory director. Towering, polished, and smug. His suit screamed power. His eyes gleamed with something colder than the snow outside. "Oh," he said with a smirk. "Did I interrupt your big promotion to CEO?" Grace didn't speak. "Go on," he taunted, motioning to the contract. "You speak German, right? Translate it for us." I could use a laugh. His assistant giggled from across the room. Grace looked at the contract, then back at Logan. And something inside her snapped back into place, something buried under years of grief, silence, and scrubbing bathroom tiles. She spoke, word by word, clause by clause. The room fell silent. Her voice was steady, cool, lethal. She explained how the contract detailed the sale of Whitestone Technologies to a German firm, but buried deep in fine print was a clause that would allow the buyers to remove any executive proven to have engaged in financial misconduct. For a moment, Logan's smile faltered. Then he laughed loud, forced. "Cute. Now go mop something." But the damage was done. Grace had seen too much. That night in the storage closet where she usually ate lunch, she pulled out her old German textbooks. She hadn't looked at them in years, but her mind was electric now. Awake, she stayed up past midnight, translating every page she could remember from the contract. The next day, she approached Linda Mayfield, the senior accountant, a woman known for her ethics and for keeping her head down. Grace held out a few translated pages. "I found this on Carter's desk," she whispered. "There's something wrong with it. If it's true, it could tear the whole place apart." Linda didn't say anything for a long time. Then she took the papers. "You're either very brave," she murmured, "or incredibly stupid." And just like that, Grace's quiet world caught fire. Every night after work, she translated more. During lunch breaks, she ducked into the unused file room and reviewed financial reports. What she found made her blood run cold. Millions missing from employee benefit funds. Ghost vendors paid for services never rendered. Altered payrolls. The accounting wasn't just sloppy, it was criminal. Then one night as she left the building, she saw something that made her stop cold. Her bicycle tires had been slashed. A note was tucked into the spokes, "Stop digging or someone will get hurt." Her hands shook as she read it. She didn't sleep that night, but she didn't stop either. By the end of the week, someone else came forward, Daniel Brooks, the factory's lead engineer. He found her in the break room and sat across from her with a quiet nod. "I heard what you're doing," he said. "You're poking a hornet's nest." "But I'm with you." Grace blinked, startled. "Why?" He shrugged. "Because this place used to mean something, and I think it could again if you keep going." Then came the whisper in the hallways. Michael Bauer, the German investor, was coming in 2 weeks. Everything depended on the site visit. Carter was ordering paint jobs, new signs, fresh uniforms, the illusion of order. But Grace knew the truth hiding beneath the surface, and now she had the documents to prove it. She was no longer just the woman who cleaned up after everyone. She had become the one person who could blow the whole system apart. Sorry to interrupt the story here, but we'd love to know your thoughts. If you discovered your boss was committing fraud, would you risk your job and safety to expose it? Do you believe one person can really make a difference in a corrupt system? Tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to know your country or city. And if this story moved you so far, please tap the heart and give us a like. It means the world. The factory walls at Whitestone Technologies had never felt so alive. Not with pride, but with tension. Something was shifting, pulsing under the surface. Workers glanced over their shoulders more often. Conversations dropped to whispers the moment someone passed by. And at the center of it all was Grace Whitmore. Word had spread faster than she expected. Someone had overheard Linda Mayfield speaking with her. Someone else had seen Daniel Brooks pass her a thick envelope during lunch, and someone had told Logan Carter. Grace knew it the moment she walked into the hallway outside the executive wing. Her cleaning cart was gone. In its place sat a trash bag, torn, stuffed with shredded paper, and on top a single photograph. Her. It was printed from the security footage, grainy but unmistakable. She stood in the frame holding a folder near Carter's office. Scrawled across the photo in red ink, "Know your place." That night she didn't go straight home. Instead, she sat outside the factory in Daniel's truck engine, off staring at the building like it was a living beast. "I think he knows," she whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. "Then we don't wait anymore." The next morning, she and Linda locked themselves in the file room. Over steaming cups of stale coffee, they laid everything out: translated contracts, financial irregularities, proof of ghost vendors, missing benefits. Linda's hands trembled as she added her own discovery, a hidden slush fund labeled Site Improvements, quietly drained for 3 years. The number at the bottom of the page made Grace dizzy. 2.7 million. Gone. Stolen. "Michael Bauer needs to see this," Linda whispered, "before Carter buries it all." But Carter wasn't wasting time. Security cameras began disappearing from key hallways. One of Linda's assistants was suddenly reassigned to a different state. Daniel's computer account was frozen for maintenance. Grace's locker was emptied, every personal item gone, as if she'd never existed. Then came the twist no one saw coming. An internal memo circulated from Carter's office, announcing that Whitestone Technologies had received a glowing preliminary review from the German investors 2 weeks before Bauer even stepped foot in the building. "This is a setup," Daniel growled. "He's fabricating good press in advance." Grace narrowed her eyes. "He's trying to make it look like we're sabotaging him." The final straw came 2 days later. Grace found her mother's old phone smashed in the break room trash bin, the only place she had stored photos of the original contract. She dropped to her knees, pieces of the shattered screen cutting into her hands. Her breath caught not from pain, but from something deeper: grief mixed with rage. That night she made a decision. They would confront Carter face to face. The next morning, before the factory floor came alive, Grace, Daniel, and Linda entered the old executive boardroom. It hadn't been used in years, dusty, untouched, like it was waiting for a storm. They laid the documents out across the table. The folder was thick, undeniable. Evidence of fraud, embezzlement, forgery, and enough violations to warrant federal attention. At 9:12 a.m., the door burst open. Logan Carter stood there, lips curled into a knowing smile. Well, well, the janitors' union holds meetings now. No, Grace replied, standing her ground. Just 3 people who aren't afraid of the truth. He stepped closer, his voice low and venomous. Do you know how easily I could have you fired? Then do it, she snapped. But the moment you try this, she held up a USB drive, goes straight to Michael Bauer and the local press. For the first time, Carter blinked. Then his eyes hardened. You're playing with fire. No, she said, her voice steady. We're putting it out. What none of them knew was that just down the hall, Michael Bauer had arrived early. Quiet, unannounced. He was walking the factory floor when he heard shouting echo from the boardroom. He followed the sound and pushed open the door. Everyone froze. He walked in slowly, gaze moving from Carter to the 3 standing across from him. His eyes dropped to the documents spread across the table. Grace swallowed. Sir, if you would take a look at these. Bauer didn't speak. He pulled out a chair, sat down, picked up the first sheet. Minutes passed. Then he looked up and said 5 words that would change everything. I'll need a full audit. Logan Carter paled. Grace's heart stopped, then pounded with something wild and unfamiliar. Hope. We're so sorry to pause the story here, especially at such a critical moment. But before we continue, we'd love to hear your thoughts. If you were Grace, would you have stood up to your corrupt boss with everything on the line? Do you believe the truth can survive when power and fear control the system? Tell us what country or city you're watching from. We love seeing how far our community reaches. And if this story gripped your heart even a little, please hit that like button. Every bit of support helps us keep telling stories that matter. When Michael Bauer uttered the words, I'll need a full audit, it was as if the air inside the boardroom cracked open. Logan Carter, who just moments ago had stood with the arrogance of a man untouchable, suddenly looked very small. Grace Whitmore didn't move. Her hands were clenched at her sides, heart hammering. Beside her, Linda Mayfield stared ahead, jaw set, while Daniel Brooks slowly exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. No one spoke. Bauer rose from the table and looked Grace straight in the eye. Send me everything you have, he said. Today. Then he turned to Logan. And you step aside, effective immediately. Until this is resolved, you are relieved of your duties. It took security less than 10 minutes to escort Logan out. The entire factory watched in stunned silence as the man who once ruled through fear was walked past the lunchroom like a ghost. Someone even clapped quietly at first, then louder. The ripple of relief was undeniable. But Grace knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The audit began within 24 hours. Bauer's team arrived from Berlin with briefcases full of legal binders and expressions that didn't waver. For days, they pored over documents, cross-checked systems, interviewed staff. Grace, Daniel, and Linda worked around the clock. They organized spreadsheets, recovered backups, pieced together years of fraud hidden in layers of digital dust. Every night, Grace came home, exhausted hands, sore head spinning. But when she saw her mother, Evelyn, sitting by the window, with a gentle smile, she remembered why she started this. Because dignity matters. Because truth matters. 3 weeks later, the findings were complete. Bauer held a private meeting with Grace and the leadership team. His tone was calm, but his words cut deep. Over $2 million were stolen, vendor contracts falsified, employee health benefits rerouted. This wasn't negligence, it was theft. Grace nodded, unable to speak. Bauer continued, but thanks to the efforts of 3 people who refused to stay silent, the damage is repairable. The factory has potential. You've proven that. And then he did something no one expected. He turned to Grace. I would like you to take over as interim executive director. The room fell still. Grace's breath caught. Me? You've already been doing the job, Bauer said. You exposed corruption, rebuilt trust, and protected the people who work here. I can't think of a better person. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. I'll do my best. I know you will, he said, smiling. And Daniel, I believe you'll make an excellent chief operations officer. Daniel blinked, stunned. Sir, No need for speeches, Bauer said. Just build something honest. From that day on, Whitestone Technologies began to change not just in policy but in spirit. The gray halls were repainted, safety standards updated, payroll corrected, benefits restored, but more importantly, people stood a little taller. Grace worked tirelessly. She visited every department, spoke to every team. At first, not everyone believed in her. Some whispered that she was too young, too soft, too inexperienced. But day after day, she showed up, listened, solved problems. She didn't act like a boss, she acted like a protector. And slowly, that made all the difference. One afternoon, a new shipment of parts crucial for fulfilling a delayed order was inexplicably held at customs again. Grace felt her heart drop. If they didn't deliver on time, they could lose the German contract altogether. But this time, she didn't panic. She called Daniel. He pulled every contact he had in logistics. Linda found a small legal clause that had caused the delay. Grace contacted Bauer directly, who made one call to clear the red tape. By the next morning, the shipment arrived. That night, the staff held a small celebration in the break room. Someone brought cake. Someone else brought flowers. Evelyn, Grace's mother, was wheeled in quietly by one of the nurses. She watched as her daughter stood before the team, not with a microphone or prepared speech, but with simple, honest words. "We did this together," Grace said, "not because it was easy, but because it was right." The room filled with quiet applause. Months passed, profits returned, new partnerships formed. Grace and Daniel, once just two employees bound by desperation, now stood side by side, leaders, builders, and something more. Their bond deepened, not in grand gestures, but in long nights solving problems in quiet lunches by the factory windows, in shared looks that needed no translation. At the end of the year, Michael Bauer returned for the annual board meeting. He stood before the employees, eyes gleaming. A year ago, he said this company was days away from collapse. Now we celebrate not just survival, but transformation. And we owe it to those who believed when no one else did. Then he turned to Grace. She reminded us that even the smallest voice can echo the loudest when spoken with courage. The entire room stood and applauded. Grace didn't cry. But later that night, standing outside the factory under the cold starlight, she whispered, "Mom, we made it." And for the first time in a long time, she let herself believe in beginnings instead of endings. Now it's your turn to reflect with us. If you were one of the workers at Whitestone, would you have trusted Grace after everything she risked? Do you believe it's possible to rebuild something better from broken pieces? Tell us what you thought of this story. If you loved it, please comment number 3 below. If it felt average, leave a 2. And if you think it could be better, be honest, comment number 1. And one more thing, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Tell us your country or city below. And if this story touched you, please tap that heart and share it with someone who needs a reminder that change is possible.